Hey guys, welcome back to Sports with Mono and Mono. It's the 12th day of February 2022, and I'm here week after week with my partner Steve. Steve, how are
Good
you?
mo- I'm great. Good morning, everybody. It's Saturday here in the Northeast, and we're looking at a 60-degree day. And
Downright balmy. Yeah.
yeah, and then tomorrow it will drop, and we'll have a couple inches of snow.
Oh, Puxatawny Phil saw his shadows, and that means 6 more weeks of winter in the Northeast, I guess, right?
Right, right.
So listen, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, and it's Super Bowl weekend, and let's jump right into it. And I think Steve, I have the monologue this week. Right?
You do, you do.
I do. And our monologue is sponsored by Coriano Trucking, of course, of Summerhill, New York. And listen, we support the truckers. Let's not get into politics with this, but they're standing up for their rights. And if Coriano Trucking says that's the right thing to do, then we're all on board.
Yes, we are.
Yep. So, Steve, our monologue this week, and I was going to actually, my monologue was going to be the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, and how it's not resonating to me like it did in days past when you and I watched the Winter Olympics with skiing and all that kind of stuff. Right now, it's snowboarding. It seems to be the great thing. But I saw something this morning, and I'd seen it before, and it's kind of a follow up to your monologue last week of Tom Brady retiring. And it was the Tuck Rule game, right? Back in 2022, and it was that snowy day in Foxborough, and it was awesome. And Tom Brady was sitting there with Charles Woodson, and you could tell, that may have or may not have cemented the legacy that you mentioned last week on the monologue. That this guy's got 6 Super Bowls, and it was an unbelievable game. Adam Vinatieri kicked not only the tying field goal, but he kicked the winning field goal in overtime. Raiders never touched the ball. But it was a conversation. He was sitting there with Charles Woodson, who made the tackle on Tom Brady. And you just wonder, what would the future have been like for this guy? Had that not gone his way? And you could see he's sitting there talking about it, going, yeah, you know what? You guys are probably right, but the call went in our direction, and it was a game changer for the next 20 years. This is uh, Tom Brady's legacy, and he went on to win many Super Bowls. But that game was unbelievable. It was great to see the highlights, and I just wanted to bring that up because you know what? And it's 2022 now. This was 20 years ago, and it was an unbelievable game. And I just wanted that to follow up on your, Tom Brady retiring. But how things could have been different if the call went the other way. And that's my monologue for this week. And I wanted your thoughts because I know you watched the game as well.
I'm glad you brought this up because even though it was 20 years ago, I still remember it as if it was last week. Um, the Raiders arrived on a Saturday. It was a beautiful day. It was like 50 degrees, something like that. Bucolic, New England. Then the day of, it snowed and wet snow until you had this ridiculous amount of snow. So just to fast forward, that play to me, 20 years later, it was still a fumble, right? The tuck rule.
I thought so too at the
Everybody's
time.
like, what the hell is the tuck rule, right? So then they reviewed it, and it was kind of like the first time where they went to review, if you will, right? Because it was still new going to review. And after, I don't know, 2 minutes, I'm like, oh, you couldn't possibly overturn this, right?
Yep.
So they overturned it. Charles Woodson to this day, legitimate. It's a fumble. Brady's not going to comment. And the reason I bring that up, but I remember that so vividly. And then, of course, you mentioned Adam Vinatieri. Gruden calls a timeout for the game winner, but Vinatieri says, "You know what that did? They gave me extra time to clear a little snow." Whatever.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what he said.
But
Yeah.
But right, in retrospect, the legacy of Tom Brady really began there. Um, the thing about the tuck rule is they abolished it in 2013. All
They
right, so
did.
that
Yeah.
rule, right, gives credence to Charles Woodson and to my eyes because I try to be as fair and objective, and I got a couple really dear Raider fans. And first thing I say, and I'm telling you in the audience when I think of the tuck, the tuck fumble, no question.
I thought exactly the same thing, that there was no way that they were going to call that an incomplete pass, and they did. And that's 20 years ago, and now we're 20 years later, and we got the Super Bowl. We got a lot to talk about, but it was great footage, by the way. ESPN did it was a 30 for 30, I think.
Yeah, highly recommend seeing it.
Big
And then
time.
just real quick, it wasn't just that cemented Tom Brady's legacy. The Raiders were winning this game 13-3. And in the second half, Brady, led New England. I think it was like a 67-yard drive. Brady ran it in from 6 yards. But the point is, you could see Tom Brady,
Focused.
machine-like in the early stages. So,
Yeah.
Tom Brady led them to a victory. So obviously, that tuck play was instrumental. But the New England really won the game.
It was just an unbelievable turn of events, but that leads us into Super Bowl weekend, Steve, and the big game is finally tomorrow, right? With the 2-week break in between, got a lot chance to see Joe Burrow, and he's kind of the fan favorite right now. And you like I said, you've been in his corner from day one, and he's going against Matt Stafford and Aaron Donald, and what do you think about the game? It's finally getting ready to go underway, right?
Well, before we do, we have a Facebook user. Is this a monologue question? So yes, and then Jim asked for my opinion based on the monologue.
Yep.
So just to answer that real quick. So what do I think of the game? I've been torn all week,
Me
back
too.
and forth and back and forth, because as I said previously, I'm in the Joe Burrow business. I have a lot of Joe Burrow stock.
He's got a pretty good record in big time games, like 7-0 record. That's pretty good.
Correct. However, and this is kind of gets back to like my Tom Brady thing when I said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again when I would bet against Tom Brady. But if I just have to look at this subjectively, the LA Rams are home. The LA Rams have Matt Stafford, not Jared Goff. This is Sean McVay's second try at the Super Bowl. You have Aaron Donald up front. You got Cooper Kupp. As much as I hate Odell Beckham, he's still a weapon. You got Von Miller. I just think the Rams have too much firepower here. And, Joe Burrow is going to keep the Bengals probably in the game for as long as possible. But I have to go with the LA Rams here, just being objective and through my analysis. So,
well, listen,
my pick with the points is I have 4 points with the LA Rams. And
all right. Well, I don't care about the points, but I've been thinking about this. So, like 2 weeks ago, tomorrow, I was 100% sure I was going with the Rams. And then Burrow steps up and moves them on to the Super Bowl. And then I was on the fence going, is this a Cinderella thing with Joe Burrow? Can this really happen? Can the Bengals win their first Super Bowl? And then I started to waver, and I said, but then just like you said, I look at the overall picture with Sean McVay, the all-in kind of thing. I can't win this with Jared Goff. I need somebody else. And he picked Matthew Stafford. And you and I have been watching Matthew Stafford since his days at Georgia, right? Number 1 pick overall.
Right.
Second time in a Super Bowl. You got two number 1 picks overall, battling them out. And then I go, you know what? But if I look at it, forgetting the normal, as long as they don't turn the ball over and that kind of nonsense, right? You got 2 great quarterbacks, and listen, One's going to the Hall of Fame already. The other one's probably getting there. I think he's got a chance, you know, to cement his legacy. But I look at the X factor, and I do think Aaron Donald, and you and I have talked about this, you know, time and time again, that, you know, we value guys that just come to work every year, and he's been doing it for 8 years, and he's going to be a factor. So, you know, after my wavering was done, I just said, let me look at both sides of the ball. And I think there's more talent on the Rams side than there is on the Bengals side. And I think Burrow will get his Super Bowl at some point. But I think Cinderella slipper turns into a Timberland boot, and I just don't see it happening this week.
Yeah.
So I'm going, and listen, I'm going with the Rams. And, you know, regardless of the points, you know, you know my feelings on this, and I just think it's, you know, who's going to win the game, and I'm going with the Rams.
Okay, yeah. And again, back to Aaron Donald. Even if, I mean, the weakest link for Cincinnati, everybody can agree, is their offensive line. Right. So if they double team, triple team Aaron Donald, he's still a force, except frees up Von Miller, it frees up blitzing, it frees up so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think Aaron Donald here in this game is actually the tipping point, deciding point. And again, you know, back to Matthew Stafford, just watching him this year, he's been just very good. And in the playoffs, he's been very good. He hasn't thrown, you know, that death knell interception. Could he do it tomorrow? Possibly. But I think Matt Stafford is prepared. I think Matt Stafford is going to have a really good Super Bowl.
And, there's so many factors.
I think the Rams win.
Yep, and it's going to be hot. It's going to be just a beautiful venue for the Super Bowl. And, you know, you and I haven't missed a Super Bowl since we were 7, probably, right?
Well, First one I vividly remember, we were too young.
Right. First one I vividly remember was the Cowboys and the Colts and the Jim O'Brien field goal and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And here we are, you know, this is Super Bowl 56. But you know what? When you look at it, it lines up to be a great game, and sometimes it's a bust, sometimes it's a great game. Yeah. But I really do have to think if I was going to be a miss, and I went against Matt Stafford and Sean McVay, who I think is just outstanding coach. He's been there before, lost it, didn't like it. No. So I don't think he's coming away empty-handed, and that's my pick for the game. I'm going with the Rams.
Yeah, okay. There you have it.
Right, so Steve, you know, a lot of other things happen in the NFL while, you know, this is all going on. And, of course, it was Lovie Smith gets hired by the Texans, which was, to you and I both, you know, quite a surprise. You know, his record isn't, you know, outstanding enough to warrant, you know, getting the job over a Brian Flores or somebody, or an Eric Bieniemy, which we talked about. So it seems like the recycling of these coaches, you know, to make a point, whatever that point may be. I just wanted your thoughts on that, because, you know what, that was a big surprise to me, him getting that job.
Well, as soon as I heard not even when he got hired, that they were talking to him about hiring him. So right then and there, I knew the 32 NFL owners, you know, were on a Zoom call and going, oh, boy, nobody hiring this Brian Flores. I can tell you that right now, boys. Anybody hiring him, man, you know, blah, blah, blah. I knew right at that point Brian Flores, who was the best candidate for that job. So right then and there, I know Brian Flores is now officially blackballed. There's no question. Lovie Smith just came back, or was the defensive coordinator. It was at Illinois. I don't know if you came with me that one day, Rutgers, Illinois, down there. I don't know.
I did.
Lovie Smith was the head coach.
Yep.
Lovie Smith did an awful job at Illinois. And listen, Lovie Smith is a football guy, defensive coordinator. You know, I get it. But Lovie Smith to be the freaking the token black guy to be the head coach of the Houston Texans.
I think it would have made a great statement. I think it would have made a great statement for the Texans to hire Brian Flores. You know,
I do too.
And, they missed the mark, but that's the Texans. And again, Lovie Smith, had a respectable record, with the Chicago Bears and so
No
forth.
question.
But,
Yeah.
but this is a young coaching man's game. And
Right.
to recycle Lovie Smith
or Eric Bieniemy, or, come on.
I'm still blown away by the fact that he hasn't gotten a job. I mean, I don't know. And you brought this up before that, maybe there's a skeleton in the closet, but otherwise the Texans missed the mark on this. And they're going to wallow in Lovie Smith's 500 career record, for the next 2 years or 3 years, whatever it may be.
Right. So Crazy. This guy, Nick Caserio, who's the executive now in Houston, came from New England.
Yeah.
And highly touted and great resume and so on and so forth. I don't have I'm done with Nick Caserio now. I don't have any respect for this guy now.
Well,
we have a Facebook user who regarding Eric Bieniemy brings up, there's a sexual assault probably charge, allegation at least in college, and that's something that
but it hasn't hindered his development as a coach and a coordinator in the NFL for 8 years.
I understand, but when I said skeleton in the closet, at least we have a little bit more clarity about
it. If there's something there, then I get it. But I think there were more qualified black coach candidates than Lovie Smith, and that's our point.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Steve, this is a topic that you and I have very passionate about. We got some feedback from our brother Thomas yesterday on the NFL Hall of Fame inductees. And we're going to go down the list. We're a yay or nay, right? First ballot kind of thing. There were a bunch of surprises, to say the least. There were a couple that finally, like Cliff Branch getting in, long overdue. You know what? And they could have done that long before he passed away 3 years ago. Absolutely.
And again, we've talked about when guys get in posthumously.
Yep.
Cliff died 2 years ago. I think it's 71, and this is another one that I feel bad about. Right? This is a guy that I wish he was still alive to.
It's one of those where you say, if Fred Biletnikoff is in, then Cliff Branch had to be in because he was part of that same Oakland Raiders, mystique kind of thing, and long overdue. So I have no problem with him getting in. But there were a couple others I want to throw out to you about whether or not. A couple right off the top of my head. Richard Seymour, Hall of Famer?
I think Richard Seymour was a hell of a football player.
He absolutely was.
I don't think he's a first ballot Hall of Fame type of guy. I mean, that's a Warren Sapp insult to me.
Right.
To be honest with you.
And who was the guy that we always put
as
the prototype? If you're not in the Hall of Fame, then these guys don't belong, and that's Joe Klecko. Right?
Yeah, and again, you don't even hear Joe Klecko's name. You don't even hear it. And it's really one of the most mysterious things. I don't get it. Joe Klecko is so respected by his peers. Okay, it's insane.
And this is not diminishing Richard Seymour's
accomplishments
on the field.
Not at all. No.
And he wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's been on the ballot for years.
I understand that, but Richard Seymour, to me, is a Hall of Famer. But if Cliff Branch has to wait 20 freaking years, Richard Seymour should have to wait at least 21.
And this kind of gets into the discussions you and I have, off the show about, if he's in, this guy belongs. So you look at a guy like Fred Dreyer he's not in the Hall of Fame. If Richard Seymour's in the Hall of Fame, doesn't Fred Dreyer belong in the Hall of Fame?
I don't think Richard Seymour had a series called Hunter.
Right. And the only guy to record 2 safeties in 1 football game was Fred Dreyer, right?
Right. Fred Dreyer.
Let's bypass that and move on to another guy.
Right.
And there's another guy that was elected to the Hall of Fame, and it's, again, not a knock on him. He was an excellent player when he played, but Bryant Young, right?
Yeah.
There are guys, if Joe Klecko's not in the Hall of Fame, then Bryant Young doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, when I saw Bryant Young, and Bryant Young is from Notre Dame, and Bryant Young, played for the Niners, and Bryant Young was a hell of a football player.
Yeah.
He's not Joe Klecko. I'm sorry.
And it happened. It helped to have Charles Haley,
Of
and
course,
of
course, and have the supporting cast.
Again, but this is not a knock on a Seymour or a Bryant Young, but then Joe Klecko belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I can't speak that enough. And we do comparisons about another guy. Here's another guy, Sam Mills from Montclair State, right, in New Jersey.
Yeah, right.
Part of one of the best trios in linebacker history, right, with Ricky Jackson and Pat Swilling, right?
Right.
Great player, but if he's in the Hall of Fame, why is Carl Mecklenburg not in the Hall of Fame? I don't get it.
I think it's sentimentality because Sam Mills passed away of cancer, and he's Sam Mills is probably dead. Got to be over 10 years, maybe.
Yeah, close to 10. Yeah.
Sam Mills played at Montclair State, which is a university in our backyard here in North Jersey. It's a Division III school.
Yep.
USFL, he was a star in the USFL until he got to the New Orleans Saints.
I think he played for the Philadelphia Stars.
He did, I believe so. But
okay.
I as good as Sam Mills was, I don't. Again, my standards could be too high. I don't.
Well, here's where
I think to me misses by that much, but that's just me.
But here's a comparison that maybe some Giant fans wouldn't like. If Harry Carson's in the Hall of Fame, then maybe Sam Mills belongs in the Hall of Fame because Harry Carson had one of the greatest players ever, right? That freed him up. He had Carl Banks, who if Carl Banks isn't in the Hall of Fame,
I would have put Carl Banks in the Hall of Fame before Harry Carson.
Exactly.
To me, I don't think Harry Carson is a Hall of Fame. I just don't. Great football player, leader of the Giants. Couldn't ask for a higher character guy.
Yep.
Super Bowl champ. I have nothing bad to say about Harry.
But I'm glad you brought that up. That if Harry Carson's in the Hall of Fame, then Carl Banks deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Carl Banks was such a good linebacker, man.
But there were a couple other guys on that list. Obviously Dick Vermeil is going to the Hall of Fame, and that's going to be break out the tissue.
I've already. I actually did one rehearsal yesterday of Dick Vermeil. Dick Vermeil's speech. It's going to be the longest speech in the history of the whole
he'll need 2 buckets to catch the salty discharge.
Totally.
But there were a couple other guys that I wanted to bring up. Tony Baselli, who we knew, had the potential to be just legendary Munoz kind of guy, and he only played 5 years, so he didn't have a long career. He got in the Hall of Fame. You know what? If he played 8 years, I would have said no discussion. Tony Baselli, Hall of Fame, but that's a little short career.
The best I can equate it to is Terrell Davis. Terrell Davis, like a Gale Sayers, had probably the shortest career from running backs. Tony Baselli coming out of USC, ironically, where Anthony Munoz played. Tony Baselli was Anthony Munoz.
He could have been a Bill Fralick type, that kind of guy.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that's debatable because of the 5 years that he played. But Tony Baselli, again, his peers would say Tony Baselli was just an absolute beast. And it took him 16 years. So,
yeah. And there was another guy, I wanted to, bring this guy, Leroy Butler, up for the Green Bay Packers. And
yeah.
To be honest, my question was, how did he wait so long? He was a pretty good player. And
yeah, but again, back to our test, Leroy Butler, yes or no? No. Took him 16 years. Again, we're talking about really good to great football players. I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging them.
No, but the Hall of
But our
Fame
standard,
is
but
the
our
level
standards,
above.
but our standards are such
Yep.
that, when you have
And
a
when we
bu-
think
when you
about
have
it,
a
and
bust in this building, it's because
Yep.
you're special.
But here's a name, Steve, that you brought up, and I didn't know his numbers were so pronounced, to be quite honest with you. When we talked about Richard Seymour getting up, and you said, "What about DeMarcus Ware?" And I said, "Yeah, very, very good player, but his numbers, you brought it up, like 130 sacks in 170 games. I didn't see that, but that means he's not going to wait 16 years to get in." But that was a good point you brought up.
Yeah, DeMarcus Ware, this is his first year eligible. I really thought this was a slam dunk that DeMarcus Ware would be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yep.
He's got to be in next year. DeMarcus Ware was again, this guy was first team all, like, not Pro Bowl. We don't do Pro Bowl stuff. We reference the All Pro team, which is first team of the whole NFL.
Right. They usually get that right. Yeah.
DeMarcus Ware was a 5-time first team All Pro, but 139 sacks in 179 games.
And to think, with those numbers that he had, and that a Warren Sapp gets in on the first ballot, that kind of stuff, we're very particular about the Hall of Fame. But listen, we're happy for Dick Vermeil and look forward to his, Brian Song type speech. Buckets going down.
Right. But for the most part, I think this year's class, I would say more deserve it than don't.
Yeah. But anyway, so the Hall of Fame, it is what it is, and it's going to be that way. Steve, let's move on off the NFL, and listen, everybody enjoy the Super Bowl, enjoy your chicken wings and your mac and cheese, which I make annually for Super Bowl. How about this blockbuster trade? Let's move on to the NBA. And I use that term blockbuster in quotes.
Yeah.
Right? It's something we talked about on the show for over a year, right? The Ben Simmons situation in Philadelphia. And then James Harden demands a trade from the Rockets to the Nets because he knew he was going to win an NBA championship playing with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. It didn't work out. Steve Nash, up until the day they pulled the trigger, says it's not happening. This is one of the big three. We can't let him go. And off he goes to Philadelphia. What were your thoughts on that trade?
I laughed and I laughed, and I'm still laughing.
Not even sure which way to laugh. Who got robbed?
I'm laughing at the Philadelphia.
The Nets.
I'm laughing at the Philadelphia 76ers here all day long. James Harden, to me,
he's not the player he once was.
I don't even know where to begin. But the first thing I fast forward to is the Philadelphia 76ers have to pay him $50 million.
But like you pointed out before, they're all making $50 million.
I understand, but I think he's going to be the first 50. Okay. James Harden, you can have him. He's a malcontent as far as I'm concerned. Ben Simmons, I said, and I talked about this.
Potential.
Yeah, but I said Daryl Morey was going to wait. Right? So Daryl Morey used to be, with the Rockets, so Harden and him have a history.
Yep.
But they can have him.
Well, that's not going to push the Sixers to win.
Not at all. You want James Harden? Here you go. You want to pay him $50 million? Here you go. I will take Ben Simmons back and I will go to work with him. We're going to practice our free throws. Outside of that, Ben Simmons is not a bad basketball player.
He's a very good defensive player.
Right.
Sure.
You want to give me Seth Curry, who can shoot 43% from 3-point? I'll take him. You want to give me Andre Drummond, who's been in the league for 15 plus years at 7 feet something? Yep. I'll take him. You want to give me 2 first-round draft picks?
That's unbelievable. Yeah.
And you want James Harden? I'll do that deal 10 out of 10 times.
But
Sean Marks, the GM of the Nets, got Harden, right, and sacrificed all this, but he has now recouped that, and I think the Nets are better off getting rid of him.
And this is all within within 12 months, right?
Sure.
That was the missing piece for the Nets to win it, right? They've gone on subsequently. Now they're on a 10-game losing streak. And now they figured out it's not going to work. He wasn't happy with not being in the limelight. And listen, I've told you this before. James Harden he's a Hall of Fame player, but those days are gone. And, he seems to be getting injured more. And listen, it's a trade that I actually was listening to some Brooklyn Nets fans that said they love this. All of a sudden, Ben Simmons is a guy that they can't win it without, and it was crazy. But they throw it in as Seth Curry as a throw-in kind of thing, and he could be the X factor in this.
Hey, listen, Seth Curry. We just had a user make a comment. Thank you for it. Seth Curry's great. Seth Curry is
he's not his brother.
That's the point. Right, you got a brother that is the best of all time shooting the rock in the hole, right? But Seth Curry, as I said, he shoots 43. I think it's 43.6% from 3-point land. Seth Curry's been in the league now for over 10 years. He moved around early on.
It's generic,
right? And now he's built a name for himself, and I could see Seth Curry staying in Brooklyn and being a part with Kevin Durant and so on and so forth for a few years. So
the Brooklyn Nets seem to think that this trade was the right thing. And listen, my preseason picks was the Lakers, which obviously I got to eat crow on that.
Yeah,
but I still think the Nets have a solid chance to win if Durant comes back and they lift the mandates and Irving can play all 7 games of a series, then they got a shot at it. But you know what? It was just funny to see that the Nets said we can't trade a guy like James Harden, and they did.
Because he became a malcontent.
Exactly.
Okay. So, what do you think Kevin Durant thinks of him? So, with this silly All-Star game, Kevin Durant's a captain, and ironically, ironically, the day after, right? I think there were 2 players left, right? And he snubbed them because he doesn't like him. You don't want to be here, Bubba.
So when we look at the NBA, and again we're coming up on the All-Star game, which marks the midway point of the season. You look at the teams, right? Does that make Philadelphia a contender? Can they beat the Milwaukee Bucks? I don't think so.
Nope.
Does that mean the Nets, can they still, with Ben Simmons as the missing piece, beat the Milwaukee Bucks? I don't know.
No.
One of our listeners, Mike Garvey, said from the beginning of the season, look out for the Miami Heat. And they're atop the Eastern Conference right now, right?
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with Mike. The Miami Heat, if they stay healthy, Jimmy Butler and company, sure. He's
really turned it around. He's really impressed me since, from the past couple of years.
Yeah, I'll take Miami. I think it's Miami and Milwaukee, for the Eastern Conference. If it works out that way, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they play in the semifinals of the East. Who knows? But I still like Milwaukee probably to get out of the East here.
But something, Steve, I wanted to bring up before we move off the NBA is I got to tip my hat to Brian Windhorst from ESPN, who he went out on a limb with this thing, and he was in contrast to his Adrian Wojnarowski, who we know he's an NBA insider for sure. And they couldn't have been farther apart that it's happening or not happening. And Windhorst went on a limb. And I tip my hat to him.
These two, right? These guys they're Adam Schefter's of the NBA,
equivalent of the NBA,
and they're both. To me, I'm huge fans of both of them.
Yeah.
Adrian used to write for the Bergen Record, which is our North Jersey paper, and he's gone on to become an NBA prominent go-to guy. And Brian Windhorst, I highly respect both those guys. So it was interesting that they both had different takes on it, but Windhorst.
I mean, you're putting your reputation on the line with this, and he came out looking really sweet, and I got to give my kudos to him.
Hey, again, nobody's going to get every story right.
Yep. So, Steve, let's move on to, the NHL, and there were a couple of things I wanted to bring up. I'm not sure you're as big a fan of Sidney Crosby as I am, but I am. A lot of people don't like him because he's kind of a whiner, complainer. But he's sitting at 499 goals, which is a milestone in hockey. And what a career he's had. Listen, all he does is win wherever he goes.
True.
And I wanted to shout out that he'll get 500 maybe over the weekend, maybe next week, but cements his legacy as one of the great players of our generation, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a Sidney Crosby fan from the talent perspective, right? Sid, the kid, when he came out, we were salivating that the Rangers, had a pipe dream of maybe getting him or trading up to get him because
it was like Lindros at the time,
right? But you knew he was, the next coming of.
Yep.
The only problem I had with Sidney was him being the whiny bitch, at times. And but Stanley Cup champion, captain,
Olympic gold medalist, World Cup.
Team Canada, all that stuff, his resume, he didn't disappoint. And in fact, he probably exceeded expectations. So,
and he's been battling a lot of injuries over the past couple of years, but that's notable. 500 today is, notable.
No.
Couple other things in the NHL. The Montreal Canadiens, like, in complete disarray, right? These are the guys that made the Stanley Cup Finals last year, and now they can't get out of their own way, so they hire Martin St. Louis.
Right, so it's an interim tag for him. Like you said, the Canadians are an absolute disaster right now, free falling. The second half of the season, let's see what Martin St. Louis can do. I wouldn't expect him to be the coach. Gives them experience. Jeff Gorton, who was the ex-Rangers GM, was hired by Montreal maybe 2-3 months ago. So he's breaking it down, which he just did with the Rangers, and they're going to build it back up. So,
and there was a couple other things with the Edmonton Oilers fired their head coach, right?
Dave Tippett. Yep.
Same talent, it's just not working out this year. And who takes the fall? The head coach, right?
Always, no doubt.
Especially in hockey, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got the best.
One other point I wanted to bring up, Steve, with Tuukka Rask retires finally, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he made a valiant comeback, and from a Boston Bruins perspective, he's great, but he never won a Stanley Cup, which was surprising to me. I thought he at least had one. Great career, 15, 16 years in the league.
Yeah, great goalie. There's no question about it. And when you think of Tuukka Rask, I would say the first thing you would think of that he won a Stanley Cup. So it's kind of
made the finals twice as a starter and once as a backup.
But Tuukka Rask was loved by the Boston Bruins. Again, I went to college, Boston University, so I'm well entrenched.
Rich in history,
Right, but I'm well entrenched in the Bruins. One of my dearest college buddies, Robert Fitzpatrick, a.k.a. Fitzy, season ticket holder for the Bruins. And what can I say? He's loved. The Boston fans love Tuukka Rask. So
hey, look, they're going to retire his number like the Rangers did with Lundqvist without winning a Stanley Cup. That's the irony there, right?
Yep.
And how about this guy Brian Marchand from the Boston Bruins?
Brad.
He's one of those pesky, hacky players, and you know what? They suspended him for some dirty play, and you know what? He's really, really good, but he's dirty.
Right. So if this is actually a silly thing, because if you look at the video, the goalie, the visiting goalie has the puck on his stick, and he turns around facing the glass behind the net, and was going to throw it to a fan. And Marchand comes skating by and bats the puck off the guy's, stick. It's a douche play, right? But Brad Marchand has been suspended 5 times for a lot of dirty stuff, right? Yep. So Brad Marchand was interviewed, I saw the other day, and he didn't think it warranted suspension of 6 games or what he got. He said, but this guy, he best I can say is
he's the guy you want to have on your team.
Yeah, that's what I'm
the
leading
guy
to. You can't stand him, but when he dons your uniform, and the equivalent I could give is Ulf Samuelson when he played for the Pittsburgh Penguins as
Tiger Williams.
Yeah, but Ulf Samuelson, we hated as equally as we hated Dale Hunter on the Washington Capitals.
That's right.
But Ulf Samuelson became a Ranger, and all was forgiven.
Yep.
But Marshawn, I really wish somebody would just beat the crap out of this guy. Really.
I'm actually surprised somebody didn't take him apart
and pull him out on a stretcher.
And listen, one other note before we move off hockey, Steve. One of our listeners said that Tuukka Rask was better than Henrik Lundqvist. And I go, okay. That's obviously coming from a Bruins fan as opposed to a Rangers fan.
I don't think so. Like, again, Henry, his numbers retired.
Yep.
Mike Richter, Eddie Giacomin, Henrik Lundqvist.
Yep.
But Mike Richter,
all 3 of their numbers are hanging from the rafters.
Mike Richter, Giacomin, Lundqvist.
I think so. Agreed.
Tuukka Rask. I agree with with our listener.
I do too, actually. Before we move on to our random points of interest, I just want to say our previous segments were sponsored by Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut, and hope they enjoy the Super Bowl. I know they're relishing in the fact that Mike was the president of Lynch Toyota, was big Tom Brady fan, and I know he appreciates us opening the monologue with that. And thanks for their support.
Thank you, Mike.
So, see, we move on to our random points of interest, and I wanted to bring this up because we were just talking about hockey. So one of the coolest goals, and the kid's 16 years old, is Connor Bernard, right? Yeah. Plays for the Regina Pats of the Junior Hockey League. What a move! So this guy immediately goes on the radar as one of the the next Alexis Lafreniere, who's going to be the obvious first round pick. But what a goal. If you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube or something. And it was awesome. But between the legs, backhanded, just magical. You saw it, right?
I did. And
you did.
Yeah. I mean, this kid's now on the radar, and you'll be hearing about him come draft time.
What a move.
Yeah, really. It was special.
And one of these other things I wanted to bring up was from a random points was that shot that Jordan Spieth had to take at Pebble Beach. Did you see that?
Yeah.
I mean, you and I are not big fans. Once we get up to the 5th floor, we start holding on to railings and stuff, right? I would never have taken that shot in 1,000 years.
No, I nope. Give me the penalty and I'll move on. Give me a stroke.
Exactly. I'll drop 3 football fields away from the cliff.
Not a chance I'm taking even a hint of a chance.
But it was great to see, and it's Tom Hoagie actually wins his first thing, beat Jordan down the line. But that shot, if you haven't seen that, I mean, just beautiful. The venue. We've talked about Pebble Beach being the most beautiful venue in golf, right? And what a shot. I mean, I just wouldn't have gone anywhere near that ball.
2 things I can guarantee when I play golf that I'm not dying of. One is falling, potentially, like Jordan Spieth could have, right? And the other one is I'm not getting eaten by an alligator because I would never be close enough.
Yeah. Well, the alligators are more prevalent in Florida, but
yes.
It was you got to see it. If you haven't seen it, it was nerve-wracking for us.
No, it was fun.
Real quick, let's move on to our
that kid who won the tournament, went to Tom Hoagie or something.
Tom Hoagie,
yeah. He it's been on the tour for a long time, and this is huge for him. He's going to play the Masters now. He gets a 2-year exemption, and I thought it was cool. I mean, Spieth was right there, but this guy beat them. And
And my Pebble Beach pick before the tournament was I thought Bill Murray, this was going to be his year to win it, but it didn't work out.
Yeah. Nah, but congratulations to
Yep.
Tom for winning that.
And something you brought up, you and I have been, not apart on this. We both agree that Trevor Bauer is, has no place in Major League Baseball, but he escaped legal problems with this. Do you think he comes back to the Dodgers? I hope he never pitches in major leagues again.
Right. I mean, obviously, this is a very sensitive subject. Okay.
Big time.
So when he got accused, everybody was taken aback by this. But to be fair to Trevor Bauer, I read an awful lot about the depositions and what went on there and so on and so forth. And,
he didn't deny a lot of it though, but he said it was consensual. Of course he's going to say that.
And it was. That's why they're not prosecuting. So he escapes that, which is probably the biggest thing I would think of, not spending the rest of your life in jail, no matter how much money you're making.
Yeah.
But Major League Baseball now, he's going to have the longest suspension ever. There's no question about it. The Dodgers owe him literally $47 million for this year. They paid every nickel to him last year. I can see Bauer missing a year. I can see maybe in 2 years.
I can't see him ever wearing a major league uniform. I'm sorry.
Listen, innocent till proven guilty, and he was never proven guilty. But
listen, so
that's why I said it's very sensitive. So.
It is sensitive. But another random point of interest: the Niagara Purple Eagles beat Rick Pitino and his Iona Gales in a big upset last week.
Huge, Jerry. Huge.
Shameless plug for the Purple Eagles, but that had to be brought up.
You got to be proud of your alma mater, right?
Yeah. And one other thing, Steve, one other random point. This whole situation with Auburn and Brian Harsin, the head coach, what's going on there? And they decided they're going to keep him.
Yeah.
But, 20 players transferred. They can't keep a coach, on the staff. Yeah. There's got to be something there. They started out great last year and then lost their last 6 games and had a horrible season. But, what is going on with Auburn football?
Not only the players, the assistant coaches were lined up to walk out the door.
Right.
So Brian Harsin came to Auburn from Boise State. He took over for Chris Peterson, who went to Washington. Yep. Right, Peterson put Boise State on the map, but Harsin, did a really good job there. Apparently, he's not a people person. Okay. But Auburn went through this whole inquiry, and at the end of the day, I don't know, the fact that they would have to pay him $20 million maybe factored into it a bit, but they reprimanded him and said, you got to change your ways, and we shall see. To be fair, the Auburn captain, who I think just graduated or is done, he said, Harsin's getting, disgruntled players, and he's not such a bad guy.
Yeah, but to that extent, they just said, "Oh my God, there's got to be so much more."
I thought he was going to get fired just based on that, but they're keeping him, and we shall see. But he's got to win. He's got to go. He's got to win,
and he's got to beat Alabama if he wants to keep his job, right?
Right. And then the basketball coach at Auburn, who we talked about, Bruce Pearl, one of our least favorites, Auburn in college basketball. Lost to Arkansas, to our loyal listener, Walt, Suey, Pig Suey. I was so happy because I despise Bruce Pearl. I despise Auburn. I don't like Auburn really in anything. So I was actually happy that Auburn.
You gotcha. So anyway, Steve, let's wrap up with our notable passings. And, unfortunately, there were a couple in the world of sports. Jason Giambi. Actually, turns out it was ruled a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Jeremy Giambi, not Jason.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. 47 years old,
Yeah.
And again, we've talked about the whole mental health issues. It's a real problem, and that was a notable for sure.
Oh, there's no question. If you watch the movie Moneyball, which a lot of people have, about the Oakland A's,
Yep.
Brad Pitt playing, Billy Beane. Jeremy Giambi was featured prominently in the movie or the character. He was a douchebag. He was an asshole. Really, flat out. A complete asshole. And he'll always be, tied to the Derek Jeter, on the flip play at the Oakland Coliseum.
Yep.
And, he didn't slide the home plate. And thank you for that and your legacy. But to be honest, when I heard Jeremy Giambi passed away during the week at the home of his parents, I thought suicide or a drug overdose. Absolutely number one cause. And it is. So and I don't
another major leaguer who passed away. We neglected to bring it up last week, but you mentioned it to me during the week. Jim Corsi, right?
Yeah,
had a good career in major leagues. He passed away from cancer.
Right. So Jim Corsi, I was talking to my dear friend Kevin Wilson, who went to St. Leo College down in Florida, which is outside of Tampa, and actually it was considered a baseball school. The George Steinbrenner was on the board of the Cologne, blah, blah, blah.
And Ricky Rex.
Our buddy Ricky Rex played there. Jim Corsi and Bob Tewksbury, former major league pitcher for the Yankees and the Cardinals. But Corsi, Kevin told me about Corsi. I didn't see him passing. And I felt compelled that we mentioned Jim Corsi, who had a very serviceable Major League Baseball career.
He did. And another major leaguer, Gerald Williams, kind of young, 55, succumbed to cancer as well, right?
Yeah. He was a great guy, Gerald Williams. Derek Jeter, one of his best friends with Jorge Posada.
Yep.
Buck Showalter actually was Williams' minor league manager.
Yeah.
And in his early career with the Yankees. But Gerald Williams was a well-liked, well-respected. He was part of the Yankee championship team.
And actually, I don't know that he ever won a World Series.
No, he did.
All right, we got to check that out because
can you check that real quick?
I thought he got traded just before they won their World Series. But
nope, I guarantee you he's on.
He was a good player. Actually, ended up retiring with the Mets. But 55, that's awfully young.
He was traded the year they won in '96.
Yeah.
Okay, but was he part of what? He came back.
I don't think he has a ring.
He came back 2001, right after 2000.
Yeah,
okay.
He missed it. It was like right in the middle.
He was in the middle. All
right, so I stand corrected. Okay.
I mean, he may have gotten a ring for being on the team in '96.
If he was on the team in '96, he got a ring.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was one other notable passing, Steve, and this is, our sister will certainly appreciate Billy Reed. He was a prominent sports writer, kind of a Kentucky-focused guy, but had good relationship with Muhammad Ali and so forth. He was a horse racing guy, and he was 78 years old. Controversial at times.
Right.
Wrote for the Courier Journal in Lexington, Kentucky, but well respected across the media from a sports writer perspective. And he passed away at 78. And my sister, I bet, probably met him.
I'm sure.
Good guy, though.
Yeah.
One last thing before we wrap up, Steve. I wanted to bring up. Kind of do a little weekly column I've just started to get back, and it's our old sports show, JPM Sports Entertainment, right? It's spelled as it sounds. And we just I just started to put up something on there a week after week, a little topic. And, a lot of it relates back to our show and the topics that we cover. And I just wanted to bring that up. It's www.jpmsportainwent.com.
Good. Hey, one of our Facebook users confirmed Gerald Williams won 2 rings with the Yankees and the Marlins.
Okay.
Thank you.
I stand corrected. Then.
Okay.
But before we wrap up, I just wanted to give a shout out to one of our loyal listeners. Michael Garvey's birthday was this week. And
Michael, happy birthday.
I sent him a picture of Jack Ham, so that would tell you how old he was.
Really?
but he's a loyal listener to the show, and happy birthday, Mike.
Happy birthday, Mike.
So thanks for joining us, everybody. And listen, please send us an email at sportswithmonoandmono@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. We'd love your thoughts. And I guess, Steve, just, enjoy the Super Bowl to our loyal listeners, right?
That is correct. And yeah, that's it. I mean, eat and be merry. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
And we'll
Go
catch
Rams,
you guys next week. Yep.
You got it.
And I love having Rob. Thanks for,
Yep.
hosting
Rob, thank you.
FacebookLive.com kind of thing. And we're excited to be here, and we look forward to next week. And obviously, we'll do a Super Bowl recap.
Yep.
Catch
Have a
up
great
with you
week,
next week,
everybody.
guys. Thanks.